So this is a quick video, hopefully, to model a Lego brick. This is an extension of a video that I've shared with you through the Google Classroom. This is my version of it. Right here, we go into the assignment, this one, how to model a 3D Lego. Mine will probably be a little longer because a couple of things I'm going to be going over that he glosses over fairly quickly. But that video is there for you as well. The first thing I need to talk about is that by default, I have had you guys set up in your documents your units to be inches. In the video that Kevin Kennedy has here, the one linked here, Kevin Kennedy's the name of that creator there, he uses millimeters for everything. But because I have you guys set up for inches in Fusion 360, then you should use a document that I provided for you here. This document here has the same values, just in their inch equivalents on there, with one exception down here that I'll talk about when we get to it. So this document right here is going to be useful for you as you go through this. So in Fusion 360, when you open it up, oh, there's a sketch started. I didn't realize that. Let me do this. Sorry, I got to fix something here. Delete that. When you open it up, it should look like this. The first thing I want you to do is come over to your browser, click the down arrow, make sure it says units inches. If it doesn't, hover over that, and this little place where it shows a pencil on it shows up. You can click that, come over and type your units here and change them to inch. Personally, if you don't have it set as default, I think you should, and click OK. So this is in inches. Second little setup thing I need you to do. It's a good habit to get into when you're making new models to always establish a component within the project. We'll call this component here Lego brick. Let's go Lego 2x4 brick, because it's a 2x4 brick. Maybe later on we'll make one that's different and put it in the same project. So I want this to be a separate component and say OK. Now, you'll notice right here in your browser, it now has Lego 2x4 brick, and that has its own origin and all of that. And this little dot right here is really important. Make sure it is the active component. If you've got the little dot up here like this, it's going to cause problems. So definitely make sure that you've got the little dot activated here on this component. So you're editing this part of a larger project that you just didn't put in there. OK, so you've got your units in inches, and you've got a component called Lego 2x4 brick. Again, the way I did that was under Assemble, New Component. Brought it up, filled out a dialog box, and it appeared over here. The next thing we need to do is we need to go in and we need to change one of your preferences. Okay. So under Preferences, you click on your face and you click on Preferences. Under General, you come down and there's Design. See, General, Design. You want to click Design, and it's very important that you have Auto Project Geometry on Active Sketch Plane. Make sure that is checked. Don't uncheck it. You want it checked like I have. I have it on already by default. Auto Project Geometry on Active Sketch Plane under Design here. Click Apply, and then say OK. And that becomes important later on in the model. In fact, it's the trickiest part of making the model. You absolutely need that, so make sure you have that. OK, so now let's jump in. We're going to create a sketch. We're going to put it on this top plane. This is oriented top there. This is the top there. Coincides with that. Click that to start it. We're going to use a 2-point rectangle. You may not have it in your menu, but that's easy enough. You can click the down arrow, go to rectangle, and you can launch it from there, as well as launching it from here, whichever works. Click your first point on the origin and pull up and away. Now, there are two ways to enter dimensions. I could either click now and then turn on the dimension tool and add these dimensions, or if I don't make my second click, I can actually go ahead and type in the numbers. Briefly, let's take a look at this document again. We want it to be 1.252 inches that way and 0.622 inches that way. So let's go back into our sketch. So this is 1.252. And then you hit Tab, not Enter. If you hit Enter, then you're going to have to go in and turn on your sketch. You're going to have to turn on your dimension tool. But if you hit Tab, it swaps between the two. This dimension is 0.622 inches. And hit Enter there. Oh, and you do hit enter then, because then it accepts those. And as you can see, it turned black. If I come down here and click fit, it zooms in. You can also move these a little bit if you want them to be a little tighter in there. Maybe you do. You can zoom in and out as you want. Okay. So there's my rectangle. It's fully defined. It's all black. Its corner is on the origin, 1.252 inches this way and 0.622 inches that way. If for some reason you did not put that in, you hit enter instead of tab, you can always do smart dimension, click on the edge, pull over, and type in 0.622. Very easy to edit your dimensions. Once you've got that right, you can finish that sketch. I always like to look at it from the home position to kind of get a look at what I've got here, and that rectangle is right where I want it on the green-red plane. Now I'm going to extrude it. We're going to extrude it. Again, if you look at the handout, the height is over here. We want that 0.378 tall. So we go back into here, and I type in 0.378 inches and say OK in my dialog box. If you don't see these little dotted lines, that's not a big deal. That's under your display settings. So you come down here to the display menu, click the down arrow next to the little TV, go to Visual Style, come over and choose Shaded with Visible Edges. That's really the way we usually look at it. We will be going back into here again later for me to show you something. So just be aware that you can change your display settings through all these different options. Visible edges only is our default, and then we'll switch to hidden edges at certain times when necessary. All right, so next thing we want to do is we want to make a sketch on the top surface of this block. Do not choose one of these other surfaces. You want to choose the top surface of your brick here. So roll this around a little bit. You can see, it's that top surface. So I want to make the sketch there. I'm zooming in and out a little bit because I like it to be more centered. I don't know, for some reason it doesn't do that by default. We're going to make a circle. So we're going to choose the center diameter circle. And we're just going to randomly place it somewhere in the upper left-hand corner. The first click places the center, and you slide away. And then you can type in the dimension. Again, let's go to this other thing here. The diameter of these studs is 0.197 inches. So in here, I'm going to type in 0.197 and hit enter. If for some reason you clicked before you put in the dimension, so you're looking at this, just turn on the dimension tool, click the edge of the circle, pull away, and type in 0.197. Either one works. I've got it dimensioned. But notice it is still blue. The reason it's blue is because while it knows how big it is and it knows what plane it's on, it doesn't know where on that plane to be. If you look at your thing here, it shows you that this top left one is 0.154 inches from the outer edge to its center and 0.154 inches from the top edge to its center. So we have to do two dimensions to locate this. So hit escape a bunch of times, make sure you don't have anything selected. Come up here and choose your sketch dimension. You're going to click 3 times. You're going to click 3 times. You're going to click 3 times. Your first click will be on this leftmost edge of the brick. Your second click will be on the center of the circle. And then you need to move upward to figure out where you're going to place your dimension and click your third time where you want that number to appear. Now again, that was 0.154. So put that in and hit enter. Now this circle is constrained left to right, and its size is constrained, but it could still move up and down. So we have to do one more dimension. Again, 3 clicks. First click on the line. Second click on the circle. Third click, move over where you want to place that dimension in your sketch and click there. And now you can type in 0.154. And so now it's all black. You've been a good engineer. You can hit escape a few times to turn off that tool. And there that circle is located in the proper place. We can finish the sketch. Again, I usually like to click home to just make sure my sketch is in the right place before I go forward. If your circle is not living on the top surface of this, you should come down and delete that sketch from your timeline and repeat the sketch process. All right, so now we want to extrude that, so we're going to turn on extrude. Now, unlike the prior time, this time we have to really pay attention to what's going on in our extrude dialog box over here. The first and most important thing is that by default it's asking you to select a profile. If I were to click now, it would try to extrude everything around that circle. That's not what I want. I could extrude this face or that face, control all this kind of stuff. But what I want to extrude is this right here, just the circular interior. So I'm going to click that, and now it says one selected and gives me a preview in blue of what I want to extrude. If you click the wrong thing, don't panic. Just click the X and go back and click the correct thing. Not a big deal. The second thing, and this is super important, please don't skip this, please pay attention to this, under operation. Always check your operation when you're doing an extrude and make sure you choose the right one. We do not want a whole new body here. We want this to join to the existing stuff, so choose join. You need join there. Now, these other items we don't have to worry about in this particular moment. We only need to tell it how far to extrude. So let's go look at our picture, and right here, all those little nubs there, if you look in this view, as if you were looking from the right-hand side at this middle cube, it's 0.067 inches from the flat surface to the top of that. So that's how far we need to extrude that. So here, go in here, backspace through this, 0.067. 0.067 inches. It should look about like that. Hit enter, and you've completed the first stud. Now, here's a place where Kevin Kennedy's video and I part ways, because he immediately goes in and makes a pattern of these studs. And then later, at the end of the video, he puts a little rounded surface right there where that edge is. He kind of rounds that off using this tool here called fillet. I want to do that now. And the reason I want to do it now is because if I do it now, I only have to do it once, and I can make it part of the pattern I make. If I pattern this first, then when I go back to do this, I'm going to have to click all 8 of these studs to do it. And that's just stupid. If I know I want all the studs to be the same, I should make them right before I pattern them. So what we're going to do now is something unfamiliar to you. We're going to do a feature that doesn't need a sketch. Up till now, every time we've used a feature, we've done a sketch and then a feature, and a sketch and a feature and a sketch and a feature. This is one of several kinds of features that do not require a pre-existing sketch. So it's under the Modify menu, and it's this little thing right here. It's called fillet. It's not fillet. Fillet is a piece of meat that had the bone removed. A fillet is basically a rounded edges. Here's the description. If you hover over that, it describes it for you. So we're going to start the fillet tool. Okay. It should say these things over here, and notice select. Select faces, edges, and features. I always click just the edges that I want. It's true you could click here and get an equivalent, but what I'm going to encourage you to do is just click the edge. So move your mouse until you just see the edge of that highlighted, and no other edges, not this edge or that edge, not this face or that face, or anything. Just this edge right here. That's the only one you want. Click that once, and that selects it. And then you need to put in this dimension. Now, I'm glad you're watching the video, because I omitted this dimension from the drawing. So if you go to this drawing and you start looking for it, how much do I round that off? Heck, I'm not even sure these are really rounded off in the picture at all. I left it off because I didn't want to clutter this image, and I was going to be doing this in class anyway. So I'm just going to tell you verbally the amount you want to fillet this by is 0.2 millimeters. You do have to type in the units, mm. If you leave those out, it's actually going to give you an error, because 0.2 inches is way too big for this thing. You've got to put the mm in there, 0.2 millimeters. Once you get 0.2 millimeters in there, you'll see it gives you a preview. It's rounded off. Come over and say OK. Again, if you mess this up, just right-click, delete it from your menu, and you can always come back and do it again. It's not really very hard. Okay, so there we go. That one's done. Now, what we want to do next is make a pattern of this. Under the Create menu, and you may already have it on your Quick Access, but under the Create menu, wrong thing, cancel that. On your Create menu, you come down under Pattern here. There's Rectangular Pattern. So that's what we want to do, pattern. You do not need to add it to your Quick Access menu. You could if you click that and click Pin to Toolbar. But if you just click it, it'll activate it. We know it's activated because we have a dialog box here. Now, by default, it wants to do objects that are bodies. This is important. If you do this wrong, you're not going to be able to go forward, so please pay attention. We don't want object type bodies. We want object type features. This allows me to come down into, now that we're ready to select the objects that are features, we're going to come down to our timeline, and we're going to click on the extrusion that made that stud and the fillet that made the edges soft. You should end up with two selected objects. Again, if you mess that up, you click the X, you come back down, click the fillet, the extrusion and the fillet, two selected there. So that's what we want to make a pattern of. Then we go axes, we select an axis. And the axis you want to do is this edge of this cube. You could do this edge or even this edge down here. It's basically just going to pattern it parallel to those, and those are all parallel to each other. But if you've been following along, this is a good edge to choose. So click that edge after you've selected to select an axis. So you select an axis, click that axis. Now, what it wants to do now is it wants to put 3 of these along your first axis, this blue one, an additional 3 along your second axis, which will always be perpendicular to that because you're doing a rectangular pattern. Rectangles are made of perpendicular lines. What we actually want is come here onto the first axis. We actually want to do 4 studs, and we want the extent, the distance from the first one to the last one to be, well, let's look at our drawing here. The distance from the first one to the last one on that edge is 0.945. So we want our extent to be 0.945. And it gives you a preview, and that looks just right. Those are going that way. Do not hit enter here. If you hit enter here, you're going to have to go back in. I will show you how to do it if you accidentally hit enter, but I'm going to assume you haven't hit enter yet. We're going to go down to direction 2. We're only going to want 2 of those, so change this to a 2. And let's go into our drawing and see that spacing is 0.315. We see that right there. So let's go back in here, change this distance here to 0.315. And now you see you get that. Now, if you accidentally have this still on 3, it'll try to put, oops, that's 1. On 3, it'll look like that, so you just need to keep changing. You can do 4, 5, 6, they're all on top of each. You don't want to do that. So make sure it's 2. You're going to put 2 of them at 0.315 on this axis and 4 of them at 0.945 on that axis, and you say OK. I'm not going to hit OK yet. Well, I am going to hit OK. Let's hit OK. If for some reason you mess this up, honestly, I think the easiest thing to do would be to right-click this and delete it and just do it properly. But if you wanted to try editing it, what you can do, if you messed up your axis selection, if you were still over here and then you click this edge on the bottom, I wouldn't even let you click that edge. Okay, good. So make sure you can select that axis, and then remember that I did 4 at 0.945 and 2 at 0.315. But you would make those changes in here and then click OK. So there we go. We got the top done. Yay. I know this is a long video. It's going to be a long video because I'm going to go through the whole part. I could stop now and come back to it. If you want to, you can do that, but I'm going to forge ahead. The next thing we're going to do is a similar type of feature. It's a feature that does not require a sketch. This feature we're going to do is called shell. If you hover over it, it gives you a description, but basically what it does is it hollows out a body. And we want to hollow this brick out from the underside. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to click on our view cube and rotate it up so we can see the underside of our part. That's the face that we want to shell on. So to do shell, it's super easy. You start the shell tool. You click on the face where you want to do the hollowing out. And then you type in the width of the edge. It says inside thickness over here in this dialog box. Your inside thickness is the thickness of the wall you want to leave. If we go to our drawing, we can see right here 0.059 is the thickness of this wall on the underside of this part. So let's go over here, type in 0.059. You can type it in over here in the dialog box, or you can type it down here. 0.059 inches. And it gives you a preview, which is pretty cool. And in fact, you can even roll it up and look. It not only hollows out this, but it hollows out inside of those studs, which is kind of interesting. say OK. So now we have shelled the underside of this. The next thing we want to do is we want to put some cylindrical parts that rise up in the center of these four, and these four. We're just going to draw one and do it as a pattern. To make sure that it's clear to you what I'm talking about, I'm going to go ahead and open a Lego that I already have made so that you can see, because I'm not sure the drawing that I gave you, this drawing here, it's real clear what's going on the bottom there. So let me show you here real quick. This is what you're aiming for. You have 3 cylinders that start on that surface down there, rise up even with this surface here, and they're hollow on the inside like that. So we're going to make those 3 cylinders next. We're going to make one of them and then do a pattern. You'll also notice they have fillets on them. I'm going to put the fillets on before I pattern them because that's how I do it, because it makes more sense. So back to here. So what we want to do now is, while we're still looking at the underside of this, and again, you can use the view cube to get there, we're going to start a sketch. We're going to make it on this interior surface. So let me roll this around a little bit so it's real clear. We're going to make it on this interior surface, down there, the one that has the little nubs on it. So that's where we're going to make our sketch. I don't know why it zooms like that. I hate it. I'm going to do some zooming to make it more in the center so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. Now, this sketch is going to have a circle, but we want that circle to be located in sort of the center of the square that these 4 make. And in order to do that, I'm going to make what's called construction geometry. So up here under Create, I'm going to start the line tool. But, and this is very important, under line type, over here in the sketch palette, under line type, let's choose construction. And we're going to move until we're in the center of that circle and click once. And then we're going to move down to the center of that circle and click a second time. Now that you've clicked those 2, you can hit Escape to turn off the line tool. Notice this line is a dotted line. That's because it's of this type. That's desirable. This creates what's called construction geometry. This will not affect your extrusions. Construction geometry is used to locate stuff inside of a sketch, but it will not extrude. If you had this as the wrong kind of line, if you forgot to do this change, here's how you change it back. You click on the line, and you go over here and you click this. You can toggle it from a regular line to a construction line by doing that. You have to have it selected to do that, but that's how you do that. So now I've got this line, construction line, going from the center of that circle to the center of that circle. Really important. The remaining lines we want to do, we do not want to be of this line type. So hit Escape several times on your keyboard to make certain that you don't have this line selected anymore, and turn construction off so that your future lines will be regular lines, not construction lines. They won't show up as dotted, they'll show up as solid. Now we're going to make a circle, a center diameter circle. We want its center to be on the midpoint of that dotted line we made. If you come down and you hover over the line, you get this X. You see the X? The X tells you you're on the line. If you were to click now, you would put, if you were to click, don't click, but if we were to click now, it would put the center of your circle somewhere on this line. But we want to move along this line until we get that triangle. That little triangle preview is the midpoint relation. We want the center of this circle to be on the midpoint, so we have to go until we see that triangle, click once, pull away. Now it's making the center of that circle fall directly on the midpoint of that line. Now here's the tricky part. This is the next part. This is why we made our preferences change. We're going to move this until, lo and behold, a purple circle shows up. That is the auto project preference change we made. If you had not done that, when you move this, it's not going to highlight that purple circle. So it's a really important preference to have set up. So right now, if I were to click, it would put the perimeter of the circle I'm making coincident with the perimeter of this circle here. What is that purple circle? Well, as it turns out, that purple circle, and I'm actually going to come over here and rotate this, that purple circle is actually that edge right there of this stud projected onto the plane that I'm working on. So when I come back over here to this plane that I'm sketching on, and I move this around, it projects, oh, I'm going to have to click bottom here so I'm perfectly aligned. it projects that circle onto my sketch. So that's a projected geometry of that. All right, so if I were to click there, it would put it coincident. But what I actually want it to be is tangent. So as I move along it, the glyph will change. If you look where my cursor is here, you see it change from being an X to being this, a circle with a little line on top of its head. That is the constraint called tangent. That is the constraint we want, is the tangent constraint. We want this circle to be tangent with the projection of the stud. Click there. And notice this fully defines this circle because its center is there and its diameter is such that it ends up tangent to that projected line. In fact, let me hit escape a few times so I'm no longer on. In fact, that purple line is actually part of this sketch now, and it is the auto-projected of that. That little line is now part of, projected onto my sketch plane down here. Click bottom again if you if you rolled around to look at it the way I'm looking at it. Click bottom so you're looking at it from the bottom. So we've got that. Okay, hit escape several times on your keyboard to make sure you're right. Make sure you can see your sketch good. Do what you need to make it look like mine. Now we're going to draw another circle, but we're going to draw it in a very interesting way. We are going to basically take this existing circle and we're going to offset it inward by 1 millimeter. This is done from the Modify menu. Under the Modify menu, there's this option. Oops, I don't want to click that one. Let me hit escape. I have to click the down arrow on the Modify. Down arrow on the Modify. Here's Offset. Launch the Offset tool and then click this circle. And it gives you a preview. It's going to assume 0.039 outside, and it's going to try to make another circle outside of this purple one. That's not what we want. We actually want it projected inside by 1 millimeter. So under this dimension here, what you want to do is type negative 1 mm. You got to type in the mm because it's millimeters. If you try to go 1 inch inward, it's going to be wrong. We want this in inside, negative rather than positive, and millimeters, 1 millimeter. So negative 1 mm. If you don't have the mm in there, it's going to do this and give you an error. So come up here, backspace, put the mm in. If you put the mm, the millimeters, it's forcing it to use millimeters as the units rather than inches as units. And say OK to that. And now you'll notice again, this is fully defined. In fact, there's even a dimension that's been dropped here. Let me pull it out so you can see it. 0.039 inches is 1 millimeter. So that's a 1 millimeter offset from the outer one to the inner one. And you are done with the sketch. So click Finish Sketch. You can, if you want, come up here to your view cube and kind of roll this thing over a little bit and move it around to make sure that you've got those two circles on the correct plane in the correct place. If you didn't, you know what? Back up in the video, delete the sketch, back up in the video, watch it again. It's not terribly difficult. I'm actually going to rotate this one this way a little bit so I can see it sort of 3D. And what we're going to do next is do an extrude. We're going to extrude that part right there. We don't extrude the center, and we don't extrude around it. We want to extrude that little bit between the inner and outer circles. So click that. Again, our operation is extrude. Always check your operation. We want operation join. Okay? And our distance this time, what we really want to do is extrude it all the way up to this surface. So rather than typing in a number, we're going to change our extent to 2 object and choose this surface. This is very much like what we did with the cylinder that had the square cut down in it in class the other day. We're changing our extent type from distance, from some number, we're changing it to object, and then we're selecting our object to be this upper surface here. So it's going to extrude it until it comes up to that upper surface. It's going to be join. Check that all of this is the same as mine before you click OK. So there we go. We've got that circle, that little cylinder in there extruding up. And if you click from the bottom here on your view cube, it's right in the center of that. I'm going to turn my view cube back up this way a little bit more again because I like seeing it in 3D. It establishes that it's right. Next thing I want to do is I want to do a fillet. I'm going to go through this quickly because we've done a fillet once already. We're going to do a fillet. We're going to do it on this edge and this edge. Both edges should be selected. This should be 0.2 millimeters. I don't think I have to explain that anymore. 0.2 millimeters. I click OK. There it's got that nice thing there. Now I want to do a rectangular pattern of these. Remember, you go to the Create menu, come down to Pattern, choose Rectangular Pattern. Make sure it's Features over here in your object type, and come down. We want to do that extrusion and that fillet. So this is all highlighted. So those are the objects. Now we need to select our axis. So click Select in your dialog box under Axis and choose the long axis. You could do that one or this one. Either of these long axes are fine. Click that long axis. We do want 3 of these, but if we go and look here, the distance, oh, I left that distance out. I thought I had that distance on here. I'll have to go and add that. It's 16 millimeters is the distance. So again, I'll need to fix that and come back here. So we want 3 in this dimension that are 16 millimeters. So we're going to type in 16 mm. And it gives you a preview of the 6. We do not need any in the other direction. So I'm actually going to click this down to not 0, but 1. You do need the 1 in that direction. So 1 in this direction, 3 in that direction. 1 row of 3. Once that's all established, you can click OK. And your part is complete. That is your Lego brick. So you can go to close it. And when you go to close, it's going to say, oh, do you want to save it? You'll click Save. You'll type Lego brick. Make sure it's in the project that is your introductory lessons. And you'll call it Lego, L-E-G-O. And then you click Save. I don't want to save mine because I don't need another one of these. That's the end of this lesson. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully that was helpful. I will go and update this document so it has those dimensions, and I delete that dimension. I'll leave these terms in here for you, which I gave you there. And it is true that the distance between these is 16 millimeters. It's going to be a different number in inches. I think it's going to be 0.630 will be in inches. So I'll go and make that change on this drawing for you so you don't have to do it in millimeters necessarily. That's all I've got for you. Thank you much. See you later.